Well, my clock says 2 p.m. in London. So that's my cue to get the ball rolling. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back. Welcome to our Jewelry Industry Voices webinars hosted by CIBJO. Welcome back, everybody. We've got 90 people on the line with us so far, this little community of our friends that have been joining us every week since April 22nd. It's so good to be able to talk to you today using one of the most effective forms of social media that we have, Zoom, this platform that's skyrocketed in popularity since many of the world was forced into lockdown to escape this virus that's around us. So welcome to this. This is the 13th of CIBJO's Jewelry Industry Voices webinars. It's hosted by me, Edward Johnson in London. Hello to you all. And also CIBJO's Head of Communications, Steve Benson in Tel Aviv. Now, if you've been with us before, you know that we say that we expect this webinar to last 1 hour. You'll also know that we don't often actually achieve that. So our apologies if you have other appointments to go to in 1 hour from now. Please feel free to excuse yourselves at any time. Sometimes if the conversation is flowing and we have an important and very relevant topic to discuss today, sometimes we do go over the hour, sometimes quite a few minutes over the hour. So please bear with us. Today we're talking about social media, and specifically using and mastering it for the marketing and also the selling of jewelry. And we want to think about that whether it's online or perhaps by directing traffic to a more traditional bricks and mortar store. Now, the fact that we're all gathered here today is an example of effective use of social media. Since launching this series of weekly Zoom webinars on April 22nd, we have reached into the homes and the offices, and apparently even for somebody, their car, of over 5,000 industry professionals. By the way, if you're tuning in from your car, please drive carefully. We have discussed in these webinars issues and debated topics that affect our industry, and we've done that to assist with the main matter of the day, that being dealing with COVID and the implications and impact of COVID. When we add our friend Rui Galopim's larger home gemology audience, those webinars on Tuesdays, CIBJO has reached thousands more. And this has enabled us to spread the message of the importance of education and also the importance of industry standards. And we've been able to do that using social media even further than we could have had we not used these resources online. So today in this conversation, I'm so pleased to be joined by a diverse panel with expertise in digital marketing, online journalism, blogging, branding, jewelry design, and jewelry retailing, both online and physical. Before I introduce today's speakers, let's check in with Steve Benson in Tel Aviv. Good afternoon to you, Steve. Good afternoon to you.
All right, you can hear me now, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to our webinar, which I am sure will be fascinating this time. For those people who may be joining us for the first time, let me just give a few brief technical details about how we will run this. we do encourage people to ask questions and to chat with one another. There is a chat box over here where you can continue conversations with each other. If you want to ask a question, however, we request that you place it in the Q&A box, which you can open from your screens. And we will try to get to as many of those questions as possible live. In some cases, the panelists might choose to respond to you in writing. We will leave space at the end for questions. What we will also do is that the webinar will be uploaded overnight. We're ready tomorrow morning, the recording of the webinar, so that you will be able to repeat it or anything that you may miss, or if you want to recommend to anybody that they watch it. And that pretty much is all that I have to say at this stage. So what I would like to do right now is just to introduce Gaetano Cavalieri, the CIBJO president, who will say a few words of welcome, and then we'll get on our way. Gaetano, I think you need to unmute yourself first.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Ed. And let me thank these wonderful panelists. And it's a pleasure to have in a CIBJO webinar people like you. I'm sure that because your professionalism and the role you play in the industry, we all, and also our friends, attendees that I have seen already in the list, many friends, and I want to say to all of them, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. And I hope that this pandemic situation is not hurting you and your countries so much as we saw in Italy a few months ago. But let me say also that we are very happy that our webinars are apparently, and I hope it will continue like this, interesting. And I'm sure that today will be more interesting because the quality and the caliber of our panelists. So I wish you a great webinar, and I'm here to listen, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks, Gaetano. Just checking through the chat, it's great to see so many people with us from all around the world. So far, I've seen from Brian in Tucson, Arizona. Good morning, Brian. Very early morning for you. All the way through to Natalie in Sydney, and a late night for you over there in Sydney, Natalie. So everybody in points in between, thanks for joining. Let's get to the panelists. That's what we're here for today. So let me start with Ben Smithy. Now, Ben is based in New York and launched the Smithy Group in 2015. It's a digital growth agency that helps businesses grow leaders and teams, ideas and strategies, and also, importantly, revenue. Welcome to you, Ben. I know that you love your golf. Have you been able to get onto the links at all over the past few weeks?
Well, thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me. Not this last week, but previously, yes. Actually, one of the things here in New York is my wife and I recently just got a car, which is like a big thing for New York City, right? And selfishly, that was one of the main drivers for me vying for getting a car, was so I can get out and play some golf more. So enjoying it when I can. The weather's been great, thankfully.
Great. It's not selfish at all. Mental well-being has been very important for all of us during this.
That's right, Ed.
Thanks for being with us there, Ben. Good morning to you. And next, let's turn to Preeta Agrawal. Now, Preeta is a New Delhi-based jewelry specialist and a writer with an award-winning blog, Bejewelled Finds. Please look for it. Her company, Preeta Agrawal Workroom, is a one-stop shop where she provides branding consultation, PR, and communications and guidance in social media, design, and trends. A very worthy panelist for us to discuss these issues with today. Preeta, welcome to you. Where are you today?
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on this panel. And I'm in New Delhi, and this is where home is. And yes, India is kind of battling right now, but we are strong.
That's great to hear. India is strong. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us. Let's turn next to David. David Broff. David is the co-founder and editor of the digital trade magazine, Jewellery Outlook. But also, I think more importantly, David is a colleague in the webinar space. You've also been very effectively providing webinars for the industry since the lockdown started. How many have you had in total now, David?
Well, hi, Ed. I'm just saying I'm delighted to be joining you all today. It's been about 25 so far, just through the lockdown period. And we've seen that webinars are an extremely effective way of communicating with people right across the industry.
That's great, 25. So a bit older than us and a bit more battle scarred than us. So welcome to the conversation today. Thanks for being here. And last but definitely not least, Sarah Ho. Sarah launched her eponymous fine jewelry company in 2006. Originally from Macau, Sarah's interest in jewelry was ignited by the collections of the iconic women in her family. Sarah, welcome to you, and what a lovely backdrop of green I see behind you there.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you so much for having me. I have to say, the weather literally just suddenly, the sun just came out. So I'm actually tanning my back as we speak. But yeah, so it's suddenly turned into a sunny London, which is great.
Great, and you're in London, right?
I am, finally got back. Yes, just got back yesterday.
And you were in Macau recently, so you had the joy of flying continentally this week.
Exactly.
Well, welcome back. It's nice to have you back in Europe.
Thank you.
Let's get started, but before we do that, I just want to comment on the fact, as a brief disclaimer on what we talk about here. Please note that none of the opinions or the information that's offered during this webinar constitutes any legal, financial, or official advice. CIBJO provides a global perspective on the challenges that we're all facing. So please, for more precise information, we encourage you to play an active part in your local trade association and seek advice relevant to your location and also your business. Social media marketing, jewelry's brave new world. We've been in this very difficult period for business and for personal affairs for the past 4 months now, or more for some people in Asia. So we're interested, of course, to start with, and Ben, maybe as the digital marketing expert in the room, can I ask you, do you think that the use of social media was effective in mitigating the effects of the lockdown for jewelry businesses?
That's a good question. I think mitigated, maybe not mitigating it, but I think that people have been able to definitely sort of pivot a lot in a lot of ways, I guess. So in a way, mitigate, yes, but really I see that a lot of businesses, especially here in the States, right? I will say that obviously a lot of what I'm seeing is here in the US, but we've seen a lot of retailers actually pivot their businesses. And what I see it as is one of those things that really sort of had an acceleration effect for businesses here, meaning there was this need and this interest in social and digital and all these things. And COVID really just sped up the need, and, you know, innovation spawned from necessity is a great achievement. So I think that when we look at this, I think that the COVID effect was really speeding up the pace of what a lot of small businesses here really wanted to do. Designers such as, like, you know, Sarah and Prita and everyone understanding like the urgency to be online, but obviously both of them already had an online presence. They already understood the need for online. But I think here in the States, it really was a retailer effect where we saw retail brands really start to understand the importance of online and digital and social.
Great. And Prita, if we turn to you for your perspective, especially in India, I mean, you know, you've been very active. You've launched a new Instagram channel along with Katerina Perez in this time, and you've done a survey of Indian consumers, which we want to talk about in a minute as well. Do you consider that the use of social media was effective? Let's move away from the word mitigating, but was it effective during lockdown?
I think it was very effective, yes, because overall, what I saw was everybody was eager to learn, especially in the initial months. Now that enthusiasm might have gone down a little bit because people are itching to go back to business. But in the initial months, everybody was very excited that they've got time on hand to do things which they could never do. And social media gave them a platform to learn, for us to impart knowledge through the new Instagram page, and for jewelers to learn to upgrade their knowledge. People also got into the technical aspects which they could never get their brands into the technical space. They got time to kind of explore those areas. So I think it's been a good effect.
And thank you. And David, you know, thinking about learning new things. I mean, I'd used Zoom a little bit before, but you and I have both used Zoom for webinars very effectively over the past few months. What else have you seen in terms of effective social media use?
Well, apart from the webinars, Ed, I would say Instagram Lives have really come to the fore. A very good way, particularly say for designers, to communicate their design ethos and inspiration. Again, I've taken part in a number of Instagram Lives during this period. Comparing them with the webinar structure, I would say webinars are much better for more complicated and structured messaging. But the Instagram Live is good for sort of informal conversation and highlighting pieces of jewellery.
Yeah, thank you. Sarah, you and I were talking yesterday, and you were saying that you used this time to experiment with your social media. What's been your experience?
Well, I feel, coming from a brand's point of view, it's been really important for us to use social media, because that is the window to our brand for the last couple of months, you know, with everything being shut. So I've actually really utilized the time to do some experimenting. I really focus on our Instagram platform, trying different ways, you know, seeing how we can improve our followers and audience. And amazingly, just by posting daily, we managed to increase by over 4,000 followers within 2.5 months. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I think it really shows the power of digital communications and how much it really has grown during lockdown.
Yeah, great.
The last few months.
Now, Ben, you've been advising a lot of clients like Sarah at this time. And I remember specifically at the end of March listening to a webinar that you and your colleagues had put on. And you said specifically in those first days, don't go quiet, go loud, you know, get on there and make the message. What have you been advising, or how have you been advising your clients to use social media since the start of the pandemic?
Yeah, for sure. And first of all, thanks for listening in on the webinar. The other thing is, we view communication and attention, it's currency, right? It's digital currency. For a brand, you know, Sarah was just mentioning, as a brand, their currency is attention, right? Attention, eyeballs, all of those. And social media is this sort of market to be able to arbitrage that attention. And when we look at that in those times, just like other markets, when markets are down, that's when people, the real investors, will move forward, buy things, get up things at undervalued assets. So in a time when the market's down everybody was worried and scared, that's when we encourage brands to really lean in, step forward, have a voice, right? It's the least cluttered for that period of time. So jump in there, have a voice, and really take new ground. And I think the brands that we saw do that effectively are now the ones that are coming out of this even more successful. We've seen brands and retailers and the likes have literally record months, not just record for COVID, but record months coming out of this, because they built new relationships. They experimented like Sarah did. They took new ground in this space. And instead of being scared and holding back, they pushed forward and said, hey, in this time where more attention and eyeballs were on this device than ever before, maybe this and Netflix more than ever before, they're making sure that they have a seat at the table and their voice is being heard.
So in terms of that stepping in, that was what you were first advising them to do. Has that changed at all now? We're 4 months in. Do you feel that people's strategies need to be different now?
Yeah. So I think the way it pivots now is, okay, not just what are you saying and how are you saying it, but like, what is the content? What is that messaging? You know, a lot of the things that, and even conversations you and I have had about this humanity of brand content, right? That brands and businesses are needing to be more human than ever. And so how do we step into that? How do businesses now understand what are the things they need to be saying? There's higher accountability for the messaging and the content that you're putting out there, not from a polished, filtered picture standpoint, but from an authenticity standpoint, from a humanity standpoint, from a social good standpoint. So now it's not just lean in, but also consider what you're saying with a human lens on it.
be more human is something we discussed the other day.
Yeah, the
like
brand
that.
humanity index, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's a nice way of describing it. Preeta, let's bring you in from India there. What did you find? Was there anything different or similar for your clients and people you talk to in India?
No, it was sort of similar. Initially, I also advised a lot of people to just go in and experiment with the platform, but at least have a presence. Because initially people would they had a presence which wasn't active. They just had a few photographs or something which wasn't just doing any purpose. It wasn't serving anything to them. And now because they had time and they could experiment, they had jewelry with them, they could take photographs around the house, they could create a lot of interesting imagery, they could show what they're doing behind the scenes. That's when they realize that the customer loves this interaction. They love to know the designer. Like even Sarah, she posts things what she's doing. There's things about her new puppy, and people love to know what is happening in her life. And that's where the brand connection happens. It's with her because it's a designer label. So it's with the person also. And that worked wonderfully for a lot of my clients.
So we've learned something great there. Sarah's got a new puppy. We're hoping that he or she is going to bounce onto your lap at some stage during this webinar. That would be wonderful, but we can't script it. So, but Preeta, staying with you for a minute, we talked when we first met about this survey that you'd conducted in the early stages of the pandemic. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about that. And if you can tell us more about that survey and also some of the insights that you gained for social media usage in Indian consumers.
Okay, so the idea of the survey came in from where there were a lot of webinars happening, but there was no opinion which was a consumer's opinion. I wanted to bring forward what the consumer was thinking, because all of us are experts in the field and we have our own opinion based on our knowledge and expertise, but nobody's talking what the consumer wants. So I put together a list of 11 top retailers of India. I got them on board, and I also got an agency, which is a research agency called Unimarket, on board. And the research agency helped me do a survey, which was a pan-India survey. So via the jewelers channel, because they have the client database, we were able to reach 4,000 people across India, get feedback from them on 22 questions. And those answers were the audience that we got were from 100 plus cities. So 4,000 plus people from 100 plus cities across India, which is a good database. And those people answered some 22 questions for us, which were based on how they look at jewelry shopping immediately post-lockdown and how comfortable are they with digital interfaces that everybody is getting into, social media, technology, artificial intelligence, etc. So we were trying to understand how comfortable is the consumer using all of this. And we were very happy with the survey because some of the insights were very new for us and we never probably looked into those directions. A few that I can share are, so we got to know that 50% of the Indian population either follows brands on social media or they follow lifestyle and jewelry bloggers. So that is their majority of source of information about a brand or a new jeweler, either the bloggers or the brand themselves. So earlier when it was all about magazines and newspapers and television, now social media leads that chart with 50%. That's a huge number of people.
That's a large number of people.
Exactly. Another finding was that 57% of the population is happy and eager to see the latest collections via social media. 57%. So they're okay they don't need to go to the showroom because it's locked down. They're okay to see it via social media, either it's Instagram or even through WhatsApp. They're okay to receive imagery and lookbooks via WhatsApp. And that can really help in the sales.
And I'm sure that percentage is going to increase over time, but it's increased substantially during lockdown.
Yes. Another very interesting thing that we found was the audience perception towards online shopping has grown rapidly during these last 4 months. From before COVID, which was just 16% of people had either shopped online or were looking at shopping online. Now the percentage has gone up by 17%. So it's literally doubled within just 4 months. it's doubled. The number of people who want to shop online has just doubled.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's, you know, that's being reported across lots of different sectors and lots of different luxuries and also fast-moving consumer goods as well, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And one interesting thing also that we found, that 60% of the population is ready to buy through a virtual try-on app. So there is an app in India where you can try jewelry virtually with the help of your laptop. You just need a laptop or a phone or an iPad. And 60% of the population is okay to try, at least, if not buy, but at least they can do their selections via this app. So you
So what's the name of that app?
It's called Mirar. It's literally like a mirror, but with artificial reality.
Okay.
It's called Mirar. And it's an Indian company, and the app is very smooth to use, and people love it. And 60% of the population is ready to try jewelry on it.
Thank you. I popped the name of that app in the chat box. I hope I spelt it right. If not, Preeta, please feel free to correct me. And if anybody wants to learn more about that survey, which I thought was very innovative, Preeta, please, if you wish, feel free to put your contact details in the chat box so that people contact you for more information on that.
I will.
David, let's turn to you. Thinking about the high end of the market, you know, that's an area that you've done a lot of work on in the past. Has that succeeded in shifting online in this period, and how's it done that, if it has?
Ed, yes, it has. I mean, I track the high value jewellery auctions market so very closely. Before the lockdown, I would typically go to the Geneva, Christie's and Sotheby's magnificent jewellery sales, which are held twice a year. And I have very good connections with those two auction houses and with Bonhams as well. At the very high end of the market, it has been extremely resilient. And during the lockdown period, we've seen 2 world record prices achieved for jewels sold online at auction. Sotheby's in late April sold a 1930s Cartier Tutti Frutti bracelet for $1.3 million, which at that time was a world record for any jewel sold online. And then several weeks later, Christie's came back and sold a D-color 28.8 carat white diamond for $2.1 million online. And it just goes to show that collectors and buyers now have the confidence to buy entirely digitally for very high ticket price items. I mean, people literally will buy a $2 million diamond online. They also need to have, of course, confidence in the intermediaries, and the auction houses are well respected and so have laid the groundwork. Also, having done a lot of social media marketing in the recent years anyway. I mean, Christie's and Sotheby's and Bonhams, they're very proactive in social media marketing. And this almost seemed to be serendipitous. It just came together very nicely for the auction houses who achieved some very startling sales during this period. Also, I should just quickly add, some of the buyers and collectors during the COVID crisis, during the lockdown period, have actually been accumulating cash. You know, they've not been spending money in certain areas. They may have cancelled holidays. So very wealthy people continue to be extremely wealthy, and they have accumulated cash, and they've been looking for safe haven stores of value in the collectibles markets. And you could argue that a very exquisite, rare and magnificent piece of jewellery can be a safe haven in times of deep crisis. And during previous serious recessions, we have seen the top end of the jewellery market fare rather well.
All right, great. Yeah, and Ben is agreeing on the chat, you know, 100%, the notion of people won't buy high-end jewellery online is being completely upended. Thanks, Ben. And Sarah, let's turn to you, because you know your jewelry is quite fine, high-end jewelry. So, and we were chatting the other day, and some of your experience of some of your sales has been very positive during this period. How have you been finding? And let's look at what works best here. And what have you found? What's been your experience, and what are the tools that were best working for you?
So basically, I mean, during this period, like I said, we did a lot of research. I think, to be honest, you know, the inquiries hasn't really stopped. We've been getting lots of inquiries on our jewelry via Instagram, I mean, that is really the main platform that we use for social media. But like I said, you know, I was also coming into this at the beginning of the lockdown thinking, as I'm sure lots of other companies do, like, oh, how do you have a successful Instagram page? Because it just doesn't feel like it's ever moving, or with followers, you know, or you're gaining followers. You know, it doesn't matter how many posts you put on, it just doesn't seem to move anywhere. So I've actually done lots and lots of research, and there are actually lots of tools that you can use to help. I think one of the most important is consistency. So like I said earlier, that we were posting on a daily basis, and that really, really helps. Because I think more than anything during lockdown periods, you know, your clients wants to, and your audience wants to hear your voice. So they want to feel that you are there during this difficult time. And so I think the reassurance really helps. So we were posting regularly. Secondly, planning is key. I always used to think that, you know, how do you, when you're busy running a company, how do you have time to even go and start posting pictures on Instagram or on social media? And this is something that I've learned a lot. I actually learned it from the best, from Katerina Perez. So I also did a course with her during the lockdown. So she gave me lots and lots of tricks and apps that are really useful for helping you with having a really strong Instagram or social media page. So for example, things like I use Plan, P-L-A-N-N, and it's just a great app because you can actually plan all your content beforehand. So if you do go through having busy days, then you don't have to worry about not being able to post something or thinking to, you know, to put something up last minute. I think also what's great about this app is that it has a strategy section, because I think what's really got me thinking during this lockdown period was, you know, what are the values of our brand? You know, what's our message? You know, like what Ben was saying earlier, you know, it's very important to have the human side, the human influence, you know, that's the most important thing. So it's not just about putting products. Of course, you know, at the end of the day, we're trying to sell products, but that's only one side. You know, we need to look at our social media platform almost as a window to the brand. So for me, you know, I make sure that my strategy is very simple. I have, you know, every week I have, let's say, 4 posts on products with call to action, which goes straight to a WhatsApp number, which goes to our head of sales. Because again, I think it's important to have someone to speak to, rather than just, you know, you're just buying something online, especially when you're buying jewelry and high price items. I would like to speak to someone. And then secondly, I would always incorporate something like an inspirational post just to show where my ideas comes from once a week. And then, or maybe something that's about education on gems, or anything that I feel that I can educate my audience. So once you start kind of putting that all together, you're not just posting products on a daily basis, and it becomes almost, you can feel the person behind the brand shining through the Instagram account or the social media platform.
And are we really only just talking about Instagram for this? I mean, what's working, what platforms are working best for you?
To be honest, for me, I use mainly Instagram. I used to have a presence over all the platforms, from Twitter to Facebook, you know, Pinterest, anything that you can imagine. And I find for us, you know, Instagram seems to be the more suitable platform for us as a brand, because I guess there's imagery, and at the end of the day, we are selling jewelry. So it's important to show the product.
Yeah. We've got a great comment here in the chat from David.
On the platform that works for us, rather than, rather than, you know, having a presence over all of them.
Sorry to interrupt. Great. Thank you, Sarah. We've got a comment in the chat here from David Warren from Christie's. It might not be visible to all the attendees, but it's visible to the panelists. So I just wanted to share. David Warren from Christie's says, our average lot value for online jewelry sales has increased from $5,000 before lockdown to $15,000 in Christie's last New York sale. That means the average sale value has tripled during lockdown. There's an indication of how the online high-end market has fared. Ben, can we turn to you over there in New York? the negative side of this, okay? We know it's working well for people, but what are the mistakes that you're seeing happening right now on social media?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a couple things. One, ironically, the mistake of not experimenting and trying things, right? I think somebody is making a bigger mistake for their business by missing out on the opportunities that are really there for growth and exploration and expansion to their business right now if they're not willing to dabble and try things. I think another mistake is, unless you are a very, very high-end, very, very polished brand that is the only exudes the most esteemed, Vogue-like imagery, the mistake is trying to perfect something before making progress in it. I think the biggest thing that brands and businesses and designers can do is be real and authentic and put more content out there and then work to level it up and perfect it. But you're never going to perfect something unless you're in the game and actually putting stuff out there. I think the other thing is, to Sarah's point, trying to go so wide that you can't go deep into these platforms. The majority of brands that I see out there can survive on Facebook, Instagram, and Google. So really on two platforms. So Facebook platforms and Google platforms, whether that's Google search, display, YouTube. One of the things that people mentioned before was like try on apps and things like that. YouTube is going really far into brand discovery and really brand experiences. You can check out a new thing that they're working with, Swirl, which is basically like 3D product imagery and things like that. But really, most business, I would say 99% of the businesses that are present in the attendees right now could build their business on Facebook, Instagram, Google platforms alone. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google search display, et cetera. Obviously, certain markets like China have a different nuance to those abilities, but for most of the people tuning in today, those are huge opportunities in there. So I think, one, get in the game. Two, put content out there. And three, if you're not spending on paid social right now, you're missing out on the most high ROI return when it comes to spending in media right now.
David, what do you feel about that?
Well, I just want to ask Ben a question, if I may, just for his views on TikTok and whether or not he sees TikTok as a channel or platform that will be useful for marketing jewelry going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with all platforms, it's everything trends up, starts young and trends up in age. The problem right now with TikTok is and what makes it great is because it wasn't very business focused. It was very human, content rich focused. So you have to know a lot more when it comes to content creation to use the platform. But the bigger thing that it's lacking is there's not a lot of profile data for targeting for ad units and businesses right now. So it really is a content creators platform, which is great and is going to become even greater to content creators over time. So it's something to keep an eye on for sure.
Preeta, what's your views on TikTok though? You're just muted at the moment.
Sorry. I feel that TikTok is a very mass sort of a platform. It's more suitable for FMCG brands like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, because a few of my clients did try to go on TikTok with their jewelry, but the kind of audience they got, they really kind of shut TikTok down very, very soon. They didn't want their high-end jewelry to go on that kind of an informal platform. Also, because of the geopolitical scenario across the globe, I think it's going to be a very difficult situation for TikTok, because recently India has banned 59 apps, and TikTok is the leading brand app out of it, which is facing the maximum brunt. And I feel a few days ago, even US is saying that we will ban TikTok. So because of China, TikTok is somewhere in a puddle right now.
And we've got other problems that, with other social media as well. We talked about Twitter, the news on Twitter this morning.
Yes, absolutely. Twitter, yesterday, so for some of you, it would be night, it would be today. And for us, it was yesterday, that the entire TikTok company panel, it was from one of their employee panel was hacked into. And most of the verified accounts of US, the biggest, like Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Apple, Uber, most of their accounts were hacked for Bitcoin scam. And this kind of a vulnerability that these social media apps give us it is quite disheartening for people who are trying to go there. So it's how the
You got to
situation
balance it. You got to balance the security with the reach.
Yes.
Steve, you wanted something.
Yeah, I also just said, just a general question, I think, because you brought up the issue of China. To what degree, if you're trying to reach the Chinese market, do you have to have a separate Chinese strategy on the assumption that some of the platforms don't work over there,
Yeah.
and given some of the problems that you've just raised right now?
Yeah, nice question.
Who wants to pick that up?
Yeah, it's a big issue, or not issue. It's just a big strategic, need that's there. Absolutely, global brands have to have a different strategy for China. That should be with any country, anyways. Like if you're not really trying to look in market to the nuances of communication, to the nuances of culture, and all of those things. But China poses another logistical layer from a technology standpoint. Facebook's always been an issue there, right? The Chinese and even the Asian markets in general are very much, there's a lot more one-to-one marketing. It's not as mass scale as it is. It's WhatsApp. It's Weibo. It's all the different things that were of more one-to-one communication and personal communication based platforms versus just the mass appeal things as well.
Preeta.
Coming back to the main question that you had about what are the mistakes that brands are doing right now. One major thing that I had noted for this question was that a lot of brands in India, this is my experience, I see there's a desire to go online, there's a desire to go socially active, but they just pass on the job to any digital agency. They don't research into the agency. They don't see if the agency is capable enough to do a storytelling for them. So the agency literally has like 2 graphic designers who have their jobs of creating 10 posts a day, and they all typically look similar. So if you see the 10 accounts that the person is handling, they all look typically similar. So there is no personalized storytelling happening. So there needs to be a lot more time commitment that the brand and the brand team needs to do with social media than just giving the job away to an agency. Even for an agency, you need to guide them. You need to tell them what is new, what is happening. This is what is the plan, what is coming in the next 6 months. You need to fuel them with a lot of information for them to bring out the best for you.
Yeah. David, what are you saying? Who's struggling to make the shift online, and who's doing it well?
Well, among those who are doing it well, as we've discussed, are the high-end auction houses. Among those who are struggling, I would say the jewellery trade fairs are going through a really tough time at the moment, trying to figure out their business models for the future. They understand that the business models will have to shift increasingly digitally, but they also have a sense that the physical space is important too for networking and so on. Some of the fairs have been quite invisible in this period. They've not been raising their heads above the parapets using social media enough. I won't name any, but other fairs have been doing a much better job and have been very proactive, maintaining, if you like, a year-round connection with retail buyers and with their exhibitors. It's still very much unknown what shape the business models will take for jewellery trade fairs at the moment. But while they are physically absent, while they are cancelled in this period, there is a lot of pent-up demand out there that is not able to be exercised. I mean, for example, in, say, purchase of diamonds. And so this is an opportunity for some segments of the market to jump in. Certain very high-end jewellery retailers, for example, that were shut down during the lockdown period, say on Bond Street, they found that competition arose from high-end, sole trader gem dealers who were using Instagram very proactively and selling quite well. So this is the whole issue of business models now is very much under review and will change markedly in the days ahead. I think the global markets can be very segmented too. Clearly, we're heading into a very severe, prolonged global economic downturn with millions upon millions of jobs being lost and incomes slashed. So it is going to affect certain market segments more than others.
Okay.
So yeah, that's where it's a fast changing scenario right now.
It absolutely is. And thank you for mentioning the trade fairs. And it gives me an opportunity to have a quick advert break of the fact that one of the most popular webinars in this series we've been running was the one on trade shows a month and a half ago or so. And if anybody wants to review that, all of these webinars in the series are recorded and are uploaded to CIBJO's YouTube channel. So please just go to YouTube and look for CIBJO Communications, and please subscribe, and you can find the one on trade fairs there, the future of trade fairs. I want to discuss influencers now, that interesting area. And Sarah, as a brand, I'd like to really understand from your perspective, have you used influencers to promote your brand? And if you did, how did it work out?
Yes, so we work with a lot of influencers. We've worked with Katerina, we've worked with Peter, Gemalog, and I have to say, I know it's probably is an area when it comes to designers and brands, and sometimes people ask the question, you know, does sales actually, you know, does it translate to actual sales? But I think honestly, from our experience, you know, we've worked with different influencers on different projects. So for example, you know, if we are in an international show, I know for a fact that, you know, by an influencer posting an image of our product on their page, it will automatically result in increase of followers on our account. And definitely, you know, we've seen in the past that it pushes customers to our booth, questioning or inquiring on a certain item. So I think on that sense, it definitely works and is successful. So yeah, I mean, you know, we've worked on it on different bases, whether it is events or launching a new product. We've also done that, and it has also resulted in sales. So really, yeah, I'm definitely someone who believes from brands, you know, it's worth working with influencers.
Okay. Britta, how influencing are the influencers?
Well, influencers can be very influencing. It's quite a tongue twister, but it depends on the brand, on who they select to represent their products. It cannot be that you go to anybody. You have to choose very carefully and see and select an influencer or a blogger who reflects the same language that your brand has. They should reflect the same aesthetics that your jewelry has. And that's when there is a perfect connection. And instead of going for numbers that they have 5 lakh followers and 1 million followers, they should go for quality of the post and the quality of engagement that the influencer has. So those are very key when you're trying to associate with any influencer. Also, I would say that instead of associating with 10 influencers for a project launch and everybody doing one post, rather do select 2 people and let them talk about your brand at regular intervals. That kind of builds a recall factor amongst one set of audience, instead of 10 audiences who will forget about you within one day. Okay. So it's a very good recall factor.
Thank you. And you've got one of your fans in the chat box saying you're a big and a very effective influencer in India. So that's nice to see. Ben, you had something to add.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that was said. And I think that influencers have a big opportunity here. I think one of the things that we have to get over is this notion where I think influencers are a very divisive topic in a word right now, because half the people are like, oh, influencers, and tired of hearing about it, and it's all this pay for play type stuff. And the other side is saying, well, it's actually a very useful thing for a small brand to get going or build brand awareness. And both are correct. I think there's a couple of really important nuances. One is making sure that you are managing across actual federal guidelines and legal guidelines when using influencers in marketing. There are things out there. We just did a partnership with the JVC here in the States talking about FTC guidelines and sponsored a book that they put out on how to use the right guidelines in there. I'll throw a link in the chat. It's a free guide that people can download. And the other thing is a lot of people expect, right? They expect this through line between post about something and sales, as Sarah mentioned, but there's a giant gap in strategy that helps link awareness to conversion in any type of marketing, and influencers are no different. Just having them post content is not going to see that direct through line to sales. Right? When we run an influencer campaign for a small business, it's saying, okay, how do we get the 5 people that they want to talk about their brand talking about it? Then we have usage guidelines that go, usage agreements to saying, how do we get access to that content? What are they posting about it? How are we posting about it? How are we running ads through that person, that influencer's content, and leading back to a landing page that gets acquisition of emails and conversions, and all of these different pieces that go into an influencer strategy that lead to direct conversion from there, not just brand awareness, but there's a greater strategy that goes in there other than just, post about it.
Yeah, great. Preeta, how do you justify the return on the investment for your services as an influencer? You're mute. Well, you're not mute, but your microphone is muted, I should say.
So sorry. I totally agree with Ben. And it's not just that you can give a product to an influencer and ask her or him to take pretty pictures and post about it, and you'll get sales bang the very next day. That cannot happen. There has to be a lot of strategy behind what you're doing, what is the timing, what is the content, how are you using that content later on, and together there is an ecosystem that you create that will help the consumers love your product and then desire to own it. So it has to be a very proactive approach about the whole idea. Also, there is a new trend of micro-blogging, wherein there is a set of influencers who have a niche and they have a very small set of followers, but the amount of engagement is much higher as compared to people who have lakhs of followers. And a lot of international luxury brands are now also roping in the micro-bloggers who typically have 10,000, 20, 30,000 followers, but their engagement and their niche and the quality of work is very, very good. So that could be another route to look at.
Okay, thank you. I want to think about the consumers now for a few minutes, and what is it that the consumer wants? And so, David, can we turn to you? Where do you see consumer interaction with jewelry brands going?
Well, clearly digitally, I mean, the shift to online retail has clearly accelerated during the lockdown and will continue to do so. Consumers, we're talking about, if you like, Generation Z increasingly moving into the key space alongside millennials now. Generation Z consumers are very much digitally driven and very comfortable with digital technologies. And combined with the complexities from this ongoing COVID crisis, wherein, for example, in my country, in Great Britain, from the 24th of July, people will have to wear masks to enter shops. It's not an ideal environment for making a luxury purchase, to go into a confined indoor space with this burdensome mask on your face and your glasses if you've got them steaming up, as it happens to me. It's not fabulous environment for luxury retail. And so I think the shift must continue into online retail through the various different formats.
Sarah, what about for you? What do you feel that the consumers are wanting to hear and see from you and your social?
I feel like, definitely we can't, things have to change. I don't think people can just open businesses as usual now after lockdown, same as before. Like I said, I think this digital is really going to be the future, and it has a huge impact on our business. I mean, I was thinking, for example, one of the biggest leaders, in the digital world, is thread styling, and there's someone that, they are someone that I think we can all learn so much from. I mean, they have been a huge help for us during lockdown, and there's even articles on them selling huge ticket price jewelry. I think the jewelry sector was kind of best, what they did best during the lockdown period. And I find someone like them, who is a social commerce, with no website, it actually, in a way, I feel like it's the future, because we've always struggled a little bit with our websites. And I don't know if it's because we are very high. And so, we never quite understood kind of why the website sales it's never as strong as our social sales, through our social platforms. And I've been kind of doing a lot of thinking. I think it really is just down to the one thing, which is what we keep talking about. It's just having that human, that person behind to assist you. Because when you're shopping on the website, you're just putting something in the basket. But
Yeah.
when you're actually shopping, through Instagram or, social commerce, what's so clever about what Threads does is that, if you need anything, it goes straight to a WhatsApp number, which is linked to all their shoppers, all their personal shoppers. And I feel this is something really is the future, and probably what all jewelry brands should think about. Because, at the end of the day, you're not just putting something in the basket. You actually are interacting with a real person on the other end of the phone.
As you would be doing in a store with a salesperson.
Exactly.
And that business that you're talking about is Threads styling. Maybe you can pop it in the chat box. That does allow us to talk a little bit about selling through social. This social commerce, which is becoming very much the way to use the internet to sell any kind of luxury and any kind of product. David, you had a point to make.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of points about, if you like, the increasing focus on sustainability in jewelry purchases going forward. Younger consumers, Gen Z and millennials, are, according to many studies, increasingly demanding a very sustainable and responsible supply chain from mine to finger. And so retailers are going to have to make sure that their supply chain is properly responsible and sustainable. And also, just alluding to a point that David Warren, the International Jewelry Director for Christie's, had made in the chat room earlier, there is an increasing demand, if you like, for certificated gemstones, now proof, if you like, that these stones are authentic, that what you see on the box is what you get. So certification of diamonds, for example, or natural pearls will become increasingly important in terms of the credibility of that item for sale.
Great. Ben, thinking about selling through social for you as well and for your clients, how do shoppers feel about buying through social media these days?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple layers. I think of it as bigger than just the actual shopping commerce on Instagram, because very few people have that actually enabled right now, right? But selling through social is something that's been going on and something that's going to increasingly go on, so much to the fact that it's going to become a non-issue over the next 3 to 5 years, because it's just going to be such a common marketplace. Right now we have retailers, brands, everyone that's either selling directly through add to cart, so in-app, commerce is actually coming through. They have their product catalogs linked up. But then also we have retailers that have, they post something and then all of a sudden they get a DM saying, I'd like that, boom, 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 set up an appointment, come in store and buy it, or buy it right there via Venmo or any other type of PayPal transactions online. So like social commerce is one of those things where it's becoming increasingly funny that it's even a conversation or an issue when it's so prevalent now that people are going to, and the other thing is discovery on social, right? All of my known purchases. So purchases where I've discovered something new, or purchases is not something that I went out and sought for. I'd say 50% or more of those are now through, I never leave Instagram for it. Like I see it, I find it, the ad gets me and I'm like, oh, I need that stupid little gadget or whatever. And then I buy it right there. It's just going to be one of those things, right? It'd be interesting to see that in the chat, if anyone that's purchased something that they've seen online via Instagram, Facebook, social media, whatever it may be, like it'd be interesting to see, type of 1 in the chat if you've purchased something that you've discovered online through social media or something like that. It'd be interesting to see what percentage of people here are actually seeing that.
Yeah, you see, you're showing me up here, Ben, because we should have had a poll on that, because that's one of the features of social media. But please, as Ben says, please pop in the chat box if you have. And Prita, can you help us out here from your perspective? What are some best practice examples of do's but also don'ts when selling through social?
One is that the imagery, because social is all about imagery. So when you're trying to create imagery, it needs to be very powerful, and every kind of an image has a certain message that it gives out, whether it's a white background product shot where the product looks crisp, nice, you can see all the details from all sides, or it is a lifestyle shot where you're wearing it, so it shows how it will look worn in a normal occasion or a party or an outside or to a mall. It will show you how you will look when you wear that kind of a jewelry piece. Or the third category is the model shots, which are more glamorous and more made up. So I always tell my clients not to do your model shots over the top. Keep them a little more realistic. Keep them a little more to the time conducive to the audience that you're trying to target. You cannot have a very different kind of a model and your audience doesn't kind of relate to that model at all. So every imagery needs to have a communication. It needs to relate to the audience that you're targeting and their lifestyle. That is how it, because when you're swiping an Instagram feed or a Facebook feed, you barely have less than a second to kind of get attracted to an image and stop. So that image needs to be so attractive that you need to stop. And then is the text and the other aspects of that image that kind of make you build your interest into the product. So it's that image that captures all the attention, and you have to invest time, money, professional photographers, everything to build that imagery.
Great. Before we go to the questions, I'd like some final thoughts from each of you. With your experience and your knowledge and work in this area, what, briefly, please, if you can, what one piece of advice do you think everyone should follow when marketing their products on social media? David, could I start with you for this one? What one piece of advice?
Be visible. So you use the internet and the social media channels to be as visible as possible to your customers. So
Great.
Instagram obviously is right at the forefront of this.
Be visible from David. Ben?
It goes back to the human factor. I think it's don't be afraid to get in there and create, right? We're all creators by nature, and especially in this industry, it's a creative industry. So get out there, put content out there, be seen, be heard, and then refine as you go. The audience will help you refine your content, right? So just get out there. You can't have success unless you're actually out there creating content.
Great. Be visible, be more human. Prita, your final thoughts.
I think you need to learn the platform. You need to spend time learning it. Like how all jewelers who get into the industry, they learn how to manufacture a piece in order to guide their team better. Same for social media. Even if you have somebody in your team doing it, but you should know how the platform works. How it's almost like a living organism. Yeah. You need to understand all the nuances in order to guide your team or the agency better.
Great, thank you. Sarah, you're out there selling your beautiful jewelry every day. What advice can you give people aspiring to be a brand like yours?
Well, I definitely agree with everyone. I think being human is super important. On top of everything else, I think consistency, and probably the most important thing is make sure you even know what your message is. What is your storyline? Because you can't just have a platform with just a selection of images. In order to gain followers and gain audience, you've got to be sure as to what is your business about and what is your core values and what exactly are you trying to tell your audience. What is your story?
Great, thank you. So we got be visible, be more human, be present, learn the platform, and be consistent with your messaging. Thank you. Listen, we're busting right through the hour, but let's turn to some questions. We've got one here from Antoinette Matlins. Antoinette asks, what do you say to consumers to make them aware of and to assure them that you are trustworthy and the gems or jewelry that you're selling are not only real, inverted commas, but as described? And also, do you tell them all of the factors? For example, what must be disclosed? Quite a long question, but Sarah, since you're selling your jewelry online, how would you reply to Antoinette there?
Well, I personally think it's very important to give information to your clients, because you have to understand if a client walks into a shop, you wouldn't just tell them, parts of a piece of jewelry that they're interested in. So I think it's very important that, the more information you can give, that shows the more knowledgeable and, that you are, and the more easily I think they feel they can trust into the brand. I think when people, with inquiries in our Instagram page, And, you know, probably a lot of them is nothing. But, you know, I always say to people, it's really important for us to answer every single one of those questions, because you just never know when one of them can actually be a potential buyer. So really, you know, I think you've got to answer your question to everyone, as if you are in a jewelry store. It's exactly the same thing.
And thank you for that, Sarah. And I'd like to also add, from CIBJO's perspective, it's very important for anybody selling online or in a bricks and mortar store to follow industry accepted nomenclature standards for what they're selling. And if they're not sure what they should be writing, please download CIBJO's Blue Books, which are the definitions of how to describe products in the most ethical and correct way that supports consumer confidence. If you're not sure about that, we'll be popping the link into the follow-up email, but just go to CIBJO's websites and look for the Blue Books. Ben, what's your perspective on that as well? How people should be disclosing products online?
Full disclosure is the only answer. Like, it's the only answer. Our industry is 100% based on trust and transparency. And without that, the industry will crumble completely. So if we don't have consumer trust and transparency, it goes away, right? Our industry is based 100% on value and perceived value. And perceived value is a form of trust and relevancy, right? Delivered over time. So we have to be relevant, and we have to deliver that trust over time, again and again and again. And so full disclosure, transparency, all of those things have been topics for a long time. But you will see this next generation of consumers, the Gen Z consumer, will not just want and desire, but 100% demand it. So our businesses have to be in practice with that completely today.
Quick question for you, Ben, while I've got you. Is it Joanna asks, is it still worth investing time and resources in Pinterest as a new brand? And I revert to my disclaimer at the start that this is not officially legal or any advice, but your thoughts about that question. Pinterest.
100%. Yeah, so Pinterest is great, and it drives a ton of referral traffic, right? And we've been increasing. So in the US, for July, we've had a lot of people actually boycott paid ads on Facebook platforms. So that's Facebook and Instagram, because of hate speech and things like that they're trying to get Facebook to better police. And so in that space, you started seeing a lot of brands turn to alternative mechanisms. So Google platforms, Pinterest, TikTok, things like that. So it's definitely a viable platform. And especially as visual, as Sarah and Prita were mentioning earlier, a visual, David mentioned it too, we're such a visual high-end market and industry that Pinterest is absolutely relevant. That said, if you're I saw another question about what's the one thing that I need to focus on because I'm less experienced when it comes to marketing. Like, Instagram is the biggest player in the game right now, especially in most markets. So if it's the one thing that you're focusing on, focus on that first. But Pinterest is definitely alive and viable.
Great, thank you. Prita, there's a question here that I'd like to put to you from Kate Morgan. What are some best picture-taking techniques? And that's thinking about the glare and the resolution and the filters and the setting. I'm assuming that you're a good photographer, but forgive me if that's incorrect.
No, I do take all the pictures that are on my page myself. So, and I have learned photography during my early learning years. So what I do advise to Kate is that you need to figure out what works for you. Because there are times that you don't want to show the entire product. You just want to create a little magic around it, then a little glare from the side, which kind of hides the product and the details, works best. If you want to show your product very clearly, very beautifully, a high resolution shot works best. There are times for behind the scenes, you just don't want them to look too much into the screen, then a filter or a color or something adds a mood. So it really depends on what you're trying to communicate. All kinds of imagery is good, but it's about the message.
Yeah, about the message. That's coming through absolutely loud and clear. Sarah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just coming from an angle where, you know, I'm not a professional photographer. I've never had any training, but I do take all the imagery myself.
Oh, wow.
And you know, I personally find an iPhone works best. And really for jewelry, it's just down to as simple as good daylight. Don't ever take jewelry inside it really is. I mean, there are so many apps available nowadays that you can actually add on. for example, there's apps out there which you can retouch, and you don't even need to have any background or skills in Photoshop, where you can already be able to retouch out the background and have a white background, or you can retouch there's any slight flaws or anything in your photo or lighten it up. So there's so much you can do. But to be honest, I take everything on my iPhone. I use a very good app called Meitu, which
What's
is
it called
actually
again?
Chinese.
Sorry, how to spell it?
Meitu. So it is Meitu. Should I put it on the?
Yeah, put it when you've got a minute. Yeah, thanks.
I'll put it on. I
When you
take
want
all
to.
my photos on Meitu purely because I personally find the Instagram filters are not great because it changes the color of the jewelry. So the minute you get your skin tone right, the color of the gemstones are already gone. So I use Meitu because it actually gives the most accurate representation of the jewelry and also, you know, on the skin and everything.
Right.
So yes.
Thank you, Ben.
Just one quick addition to that pivots back on our previous question about disclosures and stuff too. Like, I've seen it happen before, not in a prevalent, I don't want to ramp things up unnecessarily. I don't see it often, but I have seen it where I see issues of people photoshopping jewelry and filtering things and inclusions and things like that. Don't do that. That's part of the transparency piece. Like, if you want to, you know, if you want to Facetune some like crow's feet out or something like that or like, you know, but like, don't Photoshop jewelry. Like,
you're absolutely right. And there is a point in there. And as a gemologist, we would discuss this, is it's okay to Photoshop the gem as it looks in real life.
Yes.
Because sometimes the
color
lens
matching,
might
things
capture
like that.
the color that you see. So it's okay to change it to what you see in real life. But you know what? Turning the saturation up to 70%, no, not cool.
Yes, thank you.
Prita.
I was about to say the same thing that Ben said, that, you know, you cannot overdo all the pictures. You know, editing is good, but not overdo, because once the customer has bought it and they feel cheated, they will never come back, and there will be a bad word of mouth against you, which will ruin your reputation, which you've built for over the years. So just for a quick sale, don't do that. Don't treat your customer with very fine quality images. Show them what it really is. And if possible, use videos, because in videos, the editing is limited. You cannot overdo or remove the cracks so much. And video really gives a lot more confidence to the consumer as well. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you. There's a question here from Stephen Feldman about, do you all agree sustainability is a growing issue with consumers and retailers? Now, Ben, I know this is close to your heart. You're a board director of the Gem Legacy Project over there in the States. So what do you feel about issues surrounding sustainability in terms of the consumer?
I think it's another one of those things where the next generation of consumer, when I say next generation, I mean this generation. We're talking about those that are of voting age, of legislative age, of all these things. It's going to be a non-question. This young people today are more fired up than ever, and they are going to demand this. And they're the first generation that will vote with their, I mean, really vote with their money, vote with the economics. They will vote with their pockets for sure. So as a business, if you're not focused on it now, you better be, if you want a generational success in your business.
And Sarah, I know you really focus on responsible sourcing and a lot of recycled metal and gems into your products. Where do you sit with the sustainability story right now?
I think it's very important. It's one of the one of the most important things in our lives right now. And I feel like, being a jewelry brand, you know, it's my job to find alternative ways, you know, to see how we can make our brand sustainable, you know, which is why I decided to go down the recycling gemstones. You know, there's so many gems out there. You know, we go to auction houses, we buy from, you know, we have antique dealers that we work with, and it really is, you know, I don't see there's any need to go and mine new stones out when there is already so much available out there. So this is, I personally think really is up to us. And, you know, as a brand, as a designer, you know, we all have to find different ways as to what works for us. Some people might find using lab-grown gemstones, you know, is their way of being sustainable. Others might find, you know, we also have community projects as well, that we give back to local communities and environmental projects. It is our job and our role to find a way so that we can all become a more sustainable brand.
I agree with you entirely, Sarah, and thanks for that addition. I do want to just point out that, you know, the mining industry as well sustains the livelihoods of millions of people around the world as well. So that's just a slight counterbalance to the recycled only discussion point there. David, you had a point there as well.
Yeah, just very briefly to say that consumers do not want to feel that anybody has been exploited anywhere in the supply chain, and that the environment they don't want to see that it was degraded more than necessary as well. If people right along the supply chain can get a fair return for their labor, then the livelihoods of millions and millions of people around the world can be improved. So I was privileged to have reported upon with Gaetano the Global Compact Leadership Summit, which was held virtually several weeks ago. And the point was crystal clear there that sustainability is absolutely at the fore of the international agenda right now, and is the key to improving the livelihoods of so many people right along the supply chain around the world.
Thank you. And you mentioned Gaetano, and you know we've busted as always through our 1 hour mark, but we've still got 130 people with us, and the conversation has been really fantastic towards the end. So thank you very much to all of you. Gaetano, would you like to say a few words at the end of this discussion?
With pleasure. Well, I think that you noticed that I switched off my camera because I focus all my attention on my ear in order to listen to you very, very deeply. And again, I want to thank you for what you said. I mean, your professionalism is very well known all around the world, but what you said is music to my ear. Why? First of all, because you were talking about reputation, you were talking about transparency, full disclosure, nomenclature, by the way, and thank you for remind everybody the use of the Blue Book, which are freely downloadable from our website. But the fact is that the consumer has all the right to pretend attention and to pretend respect. And the fact that we all add one to the other our personal reputation and behavior, at the end, we all together, we create the industry reputation. Now, said that, I would like to link to what Sarah said previously, meaning that behind every piece of jewelry there is a story. And the fact the responsible sourcing is essential, I would say, more than important. When you describe, so you send out a message, your piece of jewelry in your platform. So you put together words, and you put together those words that for somebody who is reading those words become a sort of realize a dream. So in other words, what you do, you sell dreams. And those dreams cannot be different than what the people is expecting. So when you deliver your piece of jewelry, it has to be not only like the dream you describe, but even better. So I learned a lot from all of you today. Yeah. And I want to thank you very much indeed for your incredible lesson that at least I myself has learned. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Gaetano. So wrapping up here, next week we're turning the tables on a panel of well-known trade journalists from different regions. I am going to be asking them the questions and they will be answering. That'll be unusual for them. So where are we headed? The View of the Industry Press next week, Thursday, 23rd. Stay same time, be there or don't be there. And after that, and before that, excuse me, I should say, next Tuesday in the ongoing Home Gemology series with our great friend Rui Galapim, we're talking about Sri Lanka with our good friend Amil Samoon. And that's on Thursday, the 21st of July at 2 p.m. Lisbon and London time. Please, if you enjoy any of these webinars and wish to receive more information about CIBJO, please sign up for our communications. The email address is here. But more importantly, please like us on all the social media panels that we're on. We too need the likes, just as well as everybody else does. So finally, it's my privilege to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to Sarah, thank you to David, thank you to Ben. And by the way, Ben, I love your name on your thumbnail here. You've even got your @ in there. So your marketing is perennial and in all ways, it's great. And thank you to Preeta as well. Please follow these guys on Instagram. You'll learn about Preeta's wonderful photography. You'll get nuggets from Ben. From David, you'll have some of the most riveting webinars that I've been able to tune into. And from Sarah, you'll get news about her new puppy. So thank you very much to everybody. Thank you to Gaetano and Steve for supporting us with all of these. And thank you to all of you who've participated today. This was our 13th webinar in this series, and it definitely wasn't unlucky for anybody here. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you all this time next week again. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Ed. Excellent job, Ed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Please feel free to stay
Thank
on
you.
and read through the chat if anybody wishes. We'll just mute and turn our microphones off. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.